Hey! I turned myself into a pickle! A pickle Randy Joe! And this is 1001 Albums to Review Before You Die. And today we're looking at Minor Threat's 1983 album, Out of Step. Out of Step was released under the Discord label, produced by Minor Threat with art direction by Jeff Nelson, nationality USA, with a running time of 23 minutes and 32 seconds. Very short album. However, on Spotify, it ran at 21. Not quite sure why. That's the way it was. The blurb reads, the 50-odd minutes of music that Minor Threat released during their all-too-short reign on the busy Washington, D.C. of the early 1980s etched their place in hardcore punk history. Just as impressive is the fact that with one anthem, 1981's Straight Edge, they kickstarted, and provided a name for, a worldwide punk rock phenomenon, a lifestyle choice that rallied against the use of drugs, alcohol, and promiscuous sex. The title track on the follow-up album Out of Step is a short and simple reiteration of the themes found in Straight Edge, but the record marks a maturation in the sound and songwriting of volatile vocalist Ian MacKaye, who along with the drummer Jeff Turner founded the seminal DC punk label Discord. Indeed, from the first D chord on the opener Betray, about punk kids abandoning their beliefs in order to conform, to the ending, on the hidden track Cashing In, this is a quantum leap forward. Sure, they were still pissed off, the riffs were still rockish, but the lyrics to songs such as Sob Story and Look Back and Laugh deal with more personal issues. The addition of a second guitarist tightened up the sound and provided greater dynamic variation. While the growing straight edge movement and MacKaye's reputation as a puritanical firebrand divided some sections of the hardcore scene, the band were not afraid to laugh at themselves. Cashing In pokes fun at the growing rumors of their zealotry. Written by TSC. TSC being Tim Scott. Basic name. Tim Scott was first introduced to American hardcore punk at 14 while skateboarding up and down his friend's driveway. Since then, he has written for numerous punk rock publications, including Maximum Rock and Roll, Beat, Kerrang!, Screaming Bloody Mess, and the innumerable punk fanzines. This review is going to be a bit different from my other reviews, as normally I look only at the album, but this time, after I look at this specific album, I am going to go a bit more in depth on other songs in their discography, as Minor Threat's impact should be looked at more as a whole rather than one particular album. Minor Threat released one album and 3 EPs, and at the end of the day, all this together sums up to about 50 minutes worth of music, which is less music than some individual albums out there. Yet with this small runtime and this small discography, Minor Threat made a bigger impact on the world than many bands have at all in the course of 20 albums. It may not seem that way, as you probably don't even recognize the name Minor Threat, but their influences definitely are heard throughout other musicians, and on top of that, they created an entire subculture that people use on a daily basis and people understand as a greater knowledge to the world. However, circling back to this album and dropping all of the afterthoughts, I will dive right in. With the first song, Betray. Betray opens up with pummeling drums which replicate the sound almost of a train pummeling down through a track. It is so fast and so rapid in its movement that it feels almost like you're being berated and attacked by this onslaught of drumming. But it works to its benefit, as it does add to the atmosphere of this hardcore punk album. And the drums do not let up on almost any of the tracks here. But especially on Betray, it does set the tone. You get Ian MacKaye's voice, which is shouting at the top of his lungs, really giving to the grand skate punk aesthetic that had taken over the mainstream in the 80s and 90s. This is one of the longest songs on here, yet only being about 3.5 minutes long. And it's interesting to note that with this album, any of the longer songs, almost reaching the 4-minute mark, often change about halfway through. This one is no exception, as at about the 2-minute mark, the pummeling drum and the very dirty guitar riff switches over to something a bit easier to take in and a bit more casual to the listener. It really does strip back, and Ian isn't as aggressive here either. I think that's a huge benefit of this album, is that They are constantly changing their tempos and styles and rhythms through each song, yet not stretching any song longer than 4 minutes. It is a continuously evolving music project, yet only being at 23 minutes long. I give that song a 10 out of 10. On to the next one. We get It Follows, which carries on the very angsty feeling and the angsty themes that began this record, as this one is about running away from your problems and trying to escape the world as it puts all its pressure onto you. The very ambitious, dirty, and almost noise-like music in the background is again reinforced by Ian's shouting and screaming. But once more, even with how short this song is, it does cut off in the last 30 seconds or so and leads off with just a soft whistle. No instruments, nothing else, just a gentle, slow whistling, which I like quite a bit. It really reinforces a overall style and vibe. And that song I would give a 9 out of 10. Then we get Think Again, which again, even more aggressive, even more high energy, even more upbeat, faster, quicker, more pummeling than ever. You get a really great guitar riff on this song. The guitar riffs on this album are really, really strong, yet played so violently and so aggressively that you may not even notice them on first listen. But I feel like when going back, you do notice and you do pick up on the subtle riff. And this is an example of that, as the riff here is very enjoyable to the ear. Specifically at the 1 minute and 13 second mark, where there is a guitar solo riff, which takes over for the very short bit of the track that it does. And the chorus is shouting again with think again, shouting it, repeating it, and attacking the listener. Very hardcore punk, very much a onslaught of sound. And overall, I would give that song a 10 out of 10 as well. Then we get the fourth song, Look Back and Laugh, which is one of the very few moments in which a song opens up with just Ian speaking very gently. He's not shouting, he's not screaming at you, he is just talking. And there are only a couple of moments in the album where he does this, and I kind of like it because it is almost sprinkled in, so it adds a lot of flavor and a lot of impact when he does speak. You're listening a lot more when he has something to say directly to you. The songwriting on here is also a pivotal moment, as I think this really does show off Ian MacKaye's and Minor Threat's songwriting, as this song, like many of them, is about feeling the pressure of society and feeling the idea of having to figure out what you're doing with their life, as all his friends and everyone he knows is beginning to diverge and go in different directions. This album follows a lot of societal pressure as well as straining relationships, and this song here is a very good example of it. And when he does say the title of the track, Look Back and Laugh, it strips the instruments back and lets him just say, one day we'll look back and laugh, and it reinforces the themes of the song. Again, very impressive songwriting reinforced by the instruments, sort of prioritizing what should be highlighted and what shouldn't. I give this song another 10. It's another great track. And then we get the fifth song, Sob Story, which from my understanding is a song about how Ian MacKaye is so sick and tired of hearing people complain and cry and whine about their lives, while at the same time they're not doing a single thing about it. They're not fixing these issues, they're just prolonging them and using them as an excuse to complain and whine. He has issues of himself, but he is not going around and complaining about them. Instead, he is trying to solve them. The vocals are very powerful here, along with the drumming and guitar. It is a very angry, aggressive song about being so sick of self-pity, which is a bit ironic in a way, as Ian MacKaye does throughout this album have a very self-pitying, whiny tone. I like how this song is both very direct while at the same time being ironic. Kind of reminds me of the novel Catcher in the Rye with the character Holden. This song is also a 10. And then With No Reason, we have a song where it is about a diverging friendship, once more, or a straining relationship, as these two people who at one time were very close and were very much caring for one another now cannot stand the other's presence. They'll be in the same room and they hate each other so much that they'll avoid just looking over at them. It's like there's so much bitter resentment for the other person and for their friend that now there is just this force between them that stops them from feeling any sort of resemblance of care that they used to have before. I really like the chorus of the song, as it uses backup vocals from Ian MacKaye, I believe Ian MacKaye, and really reinforces the vocals that are already shouted here. Again, have I mentioned that this album has a lot of shouting? I give this one a 9. It's a very good song. Very, very good song. And then we have the song Little Friend, which is the weakest song on the album for me, which is saying a lot considering even this song I enjoy quite a bit. I would not skip it if it came on, as it does feel very fluent and important in the overall arch of this album. Ian is talking about a feeling deep within him that is so consuming of his very mind and soul. It is eating him alive. He says it isn't anxiety, it isn't anger, it isn't even fear. It's just this overall, ever-consuming, powerful presence that's in him. He refers to it as his little friend, as something that is corrupt and dirty, but there isn't really something that you can label it. You can try to label it, but it's not quite accurate to what it actually feels like for him. And this is another longer song on here, which again carries on with that switch up that I was talking about, as after the 1 minute mark, the tone and rhythm and style completely shift again. So much so that it could be a new song entirely, which could also be said for the last song, Cashing In. Again, a very strong point to make in a short album. Little Friend coming at an 8.5 out of 10. And then we get to the very incredible title track of the album, Dear God, listen to this one. This one's good because it reinforces the ideas and themes that Minor Threat pioneered and created and gave a title to, that being straight edge. In this one, he talks about how he doesn't drink, he doesn't do drugs, he doesn't have sex, he doesn't do any of that. He wants to avoid what society deems so important because they're just not important to him. He doesn't need these things to be happy, and he doesn't need them as a crutch. But because of this, he always feels like he is out of step and out of line with the world, as they're saying it's important, but he doesn't. He always feels like he's playing a game of catch up, but at the same time, he doesn't care for these things. He doesn't want these things. He is absolutely straight edge as fuck on this song. And I love it. I love it. I want it. I need some more of it. At the 45-second mark, the pummeling and attacking and very ferocious guitar playing strips back again. This is one of those quiet moments I was talking about earlier. Remember that? Well, here it gets quiet and Ian is talking and he is saying, oh, here's a list of things that the world say is important, but he doesn't place much importance in, and he doesn't care. But because of this, he's falling behind very much what the themes are. At this point, he does center his vocals into play here, while the instruments fall back, highlighting how important this is to him. It is a very strong theme throughout the entirety of Minor Threat's discography. That song being another 10. And then finally, we get the track Cashing In, the final song, the 10th track. And again, I love it. I love Ian MacKay's personality overall on this whole album, as on this song in particular, he is so snide and petty, a little ironic with what he is saying. This song is about how they were cashing in by reuniting after they previously broke up. His hometown thought he was selling out. His hometown thought the band was selling out by them all getting back together and playing again. When in actuality, they didn't get a lot of money ever in their entire run, and they didn't even get much fame in their entire run. They were very much underground. So saying that they were selling out was a bit foolish and a bit stupid. Ian pokes fun at this, and throughout the whole song says, yep, we're doing this for the money, we're doing this for the fame, we're doing this because he wants to follow the yellow brick road. And everything he says is so full of snide pettiness, and I love it. I love how petty Ian MacKay is on this song, because he deserves it. He should be petty. Why shouldn't he? Everyone's being so rude and attacking him when in actuality, they don't understand a single thing about him. They're making assumptions. And so with that, he has all the venom he needs to bite back and laugh at them. And I really like how this song, again, does another switch up. After about 2 minutes in, it changes up the song and does a trail off from the album and kind of closes things off with a much simpler and softer riff. It's dropping the pummeling, it's dropping the aggression, and it's just trailing off and ending things very, very strongly, I might add. Which again, another 10 out of 10 track. So it is clear that I like this album, as overall, with each track's rating coming in, it comes in at a soft 9.6. But if I were too hard on the rating, I would easily give this album a 10. And here's why. I'm not specifically talking about the album anymore, I'm talking about Minor Threat overall and their impact to the music industry. You can consume their entire discography in less than an hour. You can sit there and feel the impact and the overall overwhelming changes they made to society within just an hour. And sure, you may not realize how impactful this is, but if you read into it as you listen, you get a lot out of it, I think. And you see just how powerful they can be. Each moment of this album and their EPs is so well put together and so well crafted that not a single second of their discography feels like a waste of time. It feels like on each song, Ian is saying something important and the band is there to reinforce him. We have pummeling drums, aggressive guitar work, and anxiety-filled lyrics that make up who they are and make up hardcore punk in its entirety. Ian shouts with unwavering confidence, attacking and lashing out at every facet of society and not holding back. He is hitting hard and he's attacking because he's sick of it. And I don't blame him. He should be sick of it. It is a tiring world to grow up in, especially at the age of 19 that he was at this recording. He gets mad at the whiny and self-pitying people on Sob Story, looks down at drugs, sex, and drinking, which are things that the punk scene strongly suggested people should go for. And he's saying no. He's subverting expectations here and goes completely matched with the very aggressive guitar. The guitar sounding so coarse, angry, filled with aggression, while still maintaining catchy riffs in songs like It Follows and Think Again. The impact of this album and Minor Threat in general could be felt on forthcoming genres such as grunge. You could really feel, for example, their song Straight Edge off of one of their EPs does influence the song Tourette's by Nirvana. Speaking of Straight Edge, the song is only 47 seconds. It's off of their debut EP and is the beginning of their entire culture. It's the beginning of the straight edge movement. And I know I've said it before because I probably sound like I'm beating it in at this point, but that's how important it is. Straight edge is something that people know nowadays just by name, yet nobody knows Minor Threat. So this is one of those times where I think a musician has gone beyond music and has gone beyond what the art can do. They have now become a worldwide phenomenon and became more than themselves by creating a movement. Straight edge is something that we know now as something that are people who avoid drinking, drugs, sex, alcohol, people that go vegan, vegetarian, don't consume any sort of prescription drugs or caffeine. That is what it means to be straight edge, and it all spawned out of a short 48-second song that Minor Threat made in 1981. So the impact of coining a term as well as creating an entire movement was so strong and overwhelming that it became a culture in the whole world. For that grand statement, for that overwhelming change in culture, they are definitely worthy of praise and attention. Even if you are not a fan of the genre, I highly recommend you check this out if you have an interest in seeing just how powerful music can be with its message. I feel like this album, Out of Step, as well as the entirety of Minor Threat's discography, is worthy of its praise and gets a strong 10 out of 10. The soft rating coming at 9.6, but the hard adjusted rating being 10.10. And of course with that, I'm going to give this an E. It's essential. It's important. I don't have to say it again. I've already said it. So please, for the love of God, listen to this album, especially if you're a fan of punk and skate punk, as this is very much peak skate punk in my opinion. It doesn't get any dirtier, more aggressive, and more against society than this. The next album that we're going to review is 130 is the next one we're doing, Scott Walker's Scott 2. Look for that review in exactly 1 week from now, which will be on Tuesday. This Friday we have the review for Grandmaster Flash's album The Message, and next week we will continue with Scott 2. Thanks for watching. Please give those albums a listen. Follow along in my journey of listening to all 1001 albums. This has been Randy Joe, signing off.